Welcome back. So we got the fetch fruits okay for the succeeded case. We should do a little bit more about the loading state and then error handling. Let's start with the loading state. Right now, currently, it relies on the fact that fruits is initially null in order to show the loading message. That might not always be the case. So what we have to do is when we dispatch fetch fruits requested, that means that the request is pending, right? So that means we have to have an indicator, a flag saying that the request is currently pending, and we can then also use that to display the loading message. In case that fruits is already defined, but somehow we made a request to load it again or fetch a new list of fruits. Okay, so we need only add a property with the pending or loading flag to the reducer here. If you go to the reducer, then in the initial state, you had a property called, say, I don't know, fruits pending or loading, whatever name you want to call it. Let's say fruits loading. Let's say it's initially false because we don't have any request to start with. But the moment we make the request, that is when we have the fetch fruits requested action type, that's when we set fruits loading to true, right? Then if the request succeeds or it fails, we set it back to false. So here it's going to be pretty simple. In the reducer, you're going to handle another case. If you get fetch fruits requested, all you have to do is return the copy of the state. Let's do object assign, create an empty object, copy from the state, then fruits loading, you set it to true. Okay. Notice this is in the reducer, it's not in the Saga, right? So the moment we dispatch this action, first it goes through the Saga because it's a middleware and does the HTTP call to find all. Then it goes here, and then it's gonna set fruits loading to true. Then when we succeed, then you set it back to false. Fruits loading is false here. And put it in a new line. You can see better. Okay. Then we can use this property in the app.js. If you go back there, notice we have this check if fruits is null. It's not defined. So we can also add or right here, this.props.fruits still loading. We keep displaying the loading message. Now, in order to be able to access fruits loading from the application state, you'll have to go down there to map state to props and add the fruits loading property, which comes from where? From state.fruits loading, okay? And that's it. We have access to fruits loading. And let's see. To illustrate this working, to illustrate that this is actually working, we can set the fruits list in the reducer initial state. Instead of saying null right here for the fruits, you can set it to an empty list. So that will be defined. Then the app is going to check for the second condition because the first one is going to be what? This is going to be empty array, which is defined. Then it becomes a falsy value, and then it's going to check the second one, fruits loading. So let's see how it goes. You can see it loading fruits, and it did it, okay? And you can see here in the console log for the this.props, and you can trace it back, and you can see that the first one here, this props console log from the render function of the app component gives fruits loading false initially, then it makes a request for the fruits, then it changes fruits loading from false, right, to true. So here this props, and then at the end, when we get the succeeded action, it changes, you can see this props, fruits loading back to false. So we don't have that loading state anymore. Okay? And that happens here after succeeded. So let's go back here. That's what we did. Now the second thing we have to do is handle the error. For example, if you go back to your API.js, we're always resolving the promise here for find all with a value, but that might not always be the case, right? Because requests can fail. So let's simulate an error. Instead of resolving, I'm going to comment this out. I'm going to do reject, and I'm going to create a new error. I'm going to give this message to this error saying that it failed to fetch fruit data. Could be any message you want. Okay, so this is going to simulate an error from the find all. So it's like we failed the request after 2 seconds. Now let's see what happens in that case. So we get a loading state that it gets stuck, right? Never gets out of that loading state. Then we get this uncaught at root saga at the method fetch fruits. So there is an error that was not caught in our saga function, generator function. And that's what we're going to learn in the next lesson. We're going to learn how to implement error handling. See you then.